Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great excitement that I welcome you back to the Chatbot Chess Championship. Now, I do say back. Many of you watched, but if you didn't, there was a Chatbot Chess Championship that I put on in 2025. It included the Chat GPTs of the world, the Meta AIs of the world, and so on and so forth. But in that 8-player tournament, there were 2 special guests. One was Martin, the notorious Chess.com bot, and the other was Stockfish. And the reason is, these language learning models frequently make illegal moves. So the only way to balance the field when one side doesn't play by the rules is to include a supercomputer that does play by the rules. But for this edition, we're not doing any of that. We're not doing any of that at all. And instead, this is your bracket. And for the next week, here in February of 2026, we will enjoy incredible action between ChatGPT versus Gemini, Grok Copilot, Snapchat Cloud, Meta AI, and DeepSeek. DeepSeek, of course, has made ripples in the world of LLMs and AI and so on and so forth. And ChatGPT versus DeepSeek will definitely be an incredible show in and of itself. By the way, shout out to the team at YouTube. They made us these like custom jackets. They got my username on the back, and I even got like a license plate that says Gotham. This is just very exciting. I'm really, really pumped about this, and I'm wearing it for today. It's not often I get to wear a racing jacket, so that's pretty incredible. Folks, today we are kicking things off with ChatGPT versus Gemini. Now, I have a lot of content on this channel of these machines playing against each other, and it is always really, really hilarious. Gemini has the white pieces in this game. This series is backed by popular demand, and so yeah, it's gonna be a tremendous amount of fun. Now, we're gonna kick things off with the move e4. Now, Gemini playing on the white side opened with e4. ChatGPT, before we actually started playing, threatened me. It was like, do you want me to play at maximum strength? And I was like, I don't even know what that means, dude. Just play your best. It was like, well, I can play at 2400. I was like, no, you can't. c5. So ChatGPT plays the Sicilian defense, knight to f3, and d6. This is the Sicilian. We are going for one of the main lines after the move d6. White will then play the move d4, something like this. Pawn takes, knight f6, a6, maybe a classical Sicilian, maybe a dragon Sicilian. Now, of course, these LLMs are programmed from tons of information available out there in the ether. And so naturally, they will play the best opening with black, the opening that is kind of the meta at the highest level. And that is the Najdorf. At this point, you know, ChatGPT played a6 and was like, oh, I'm playing the Najdorf. And then Gemini gave me like a PhD statement as to this. A6 is, that's the Rolls Royce of chess openings is. A6, yeah. Now, at this point on move 6, White has many choices. The Sicilian is like, it's like swimming out in the ocean, you know? And if you are a competent swimmer, and the tide is good, you can get a really good swim. If the tide is rough and or you are not a very good swimmer, we'll never see you again. And so you have to really be keenly aware of the plans, the historical games, the structures, and everything like that in this position, or in any opening that you are playing. White plays bishop e3. Very flexible move. Probably a good place to put this bishop, considering this looks stupid. This gets you forked. But this is, of course, putting the bishop on g5 is the alternative. And now e5. So e5, black really has 2 choices. Black can play very solid e6. Black can play more aggressive e5. And white goes knight b3. Now, in my upcoming book, or maybe it's out already if you're watching late 2026, there is actually this exact position almost in one of the chapters on backwards pawns. This is a backwards pawn, a pawn whose neighbors have advanced really far forward, and the square in front of it is controlled by the opponent. This is one thing. Then there's kind of the idea of playing in certain pawn structures and creating outposts, creating squares in your opponent's position where you can plant a piece from which it will be very difficult to remove. This is a very key square in the Najdorf. Black really tries to defend it or try to push. White tries to occupy it and apply pressure. Black develops behind that and tries to not be at weak at all. And I was very impressed with the way these bots handled the opening. Black played bishop e6, which is one of the most common moves. With white, you also have the choice of where to castle. Not right now, obviously. You would, well, actually, GPT or Gemini would castle at this point anyway. Now, I've made content about these LLMs for like 3 years at this point, so I'm kind of waiting for them to start eating their own pieces. But to my shock and horror, f3 was played, which is the best move. f3 prevents the knight from going to g4, and f3 is also an admission that you're probably not going to castle in this direction. It's like you're going to castle this way and use this pawn as a jumping, propelling thing to pawn storm the opponent. Yeah, I was terrified. ChatGPT went bishop to e7. Gemini developed the queen, and they castled like this. Now, when two sides castle and it's opposite of each other like this, it's kind of like dropping the gloves in hockey. And when you drop the gloves, that's a fight. You're gonna fight. Now you're gonna fight for around 20 seconds, kind of lightly jab each other, miss like 90% of your punches, and then one of you is gonna fall on top of the other on the ice. That's not really what this is. This is a very serious fight, because black is gonna go for b5. White is gonna go for g4, g5 is what I meant to say. Black will then play knight here, and then the queen will try to come out if it's safe, and then the rooks are going to come in, and yeah, I mean, may the best player win. So, knight bd7, g4, b5. And by the way, it doesn't even stop at g4 and b5 as these LLMs proceed to wallop each other further. g5, right? Now, at this point, you're like, well, my knight's hanging. I got to move the knight. No. Well, it is possible to go knight to h5. That would be called a blockade of a pawn attack. That's also in How to Win at Chess Next Level. Comes out October 2026. Bookmark it. But this is, yes, this would be a blockade of the attacking pawns. Instead, we go danger levels. A knight is worth a knight, so you might as well take it. I was like, wow, b4 is crazy. It's an amazing move. Both sides are getting in. So now g takes f6, and now b takes c3. And this is a mutual capture sequence. So two pawns enter. Now, what is possible to get away with something like this here is that white doesn't have a move right now that causes massive damage. What I mean by that is if white were to take on e7, which would be, it looks logical, you would lose your queen, but it would be check. That's actually the most important detail. The most important detail is that when this queen is captured, this would be a check. If the position was something like this would actually be a winning position for white, because you would take the bishop, and then, if this, you would take a queen. So you would actually make a queen, you would lose it, but you took a bishop. That's the difference, is that here, you cannot take the bishop because this is a check. It's actually quite incredible, and there's no other move with the pawn. Like, this could be a check, and then that would be good. Long story short, you cannot take on e7 because it is completely idiotic. And so in this position, Gemini plays pawn takes e7. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a very short game, because even though both of these LLMs now are smart enough to make enough legal moves, they're still stupid. They're not going, they don't have full board awareness. But I was thinking, well, maybe if it gets weird, ChatGPT is going to malfunction. It didn't. It took on d2 with check. And now white has to just take the pawn back, which it correctly did, and black plays queen e7. Again, the very first video I made ever about ChatGPT, pieces were teleporting all over the place. And at this point, before the game even started, it was like, do you want me to play as a 1700 or a 2000 or an international master? And I was like, wow, look how far we've come, But Gemini and Google just put on their own kind of bot championship. So I was thinking, okay, it's going to be a good match. Yeah, no. White now just goes back to developing, plays bishop d3. Black now has many options, but of course, when you're up a queen, you should... Look, here, if I was teaching somebody, I would say take the knight immediately, and then I would say play this move. Practically speaking, the more pieces you trade off, like the more impossible it will be for the side with no queen to do anything, because then you're going to play rook here and double up and try to, even if you sack a rook for a bishop, you will be completely winning. Instead of that, a5 by ChatGPT, that's, and after king b1 was played, it played a4. And now this knight is virtually trapped, and it has to go back to c1, at which point black will play a3 and rook b8 and rook c8 and shortly win the game. No. Because in this position, Gemini played knight d5. This bar only shoots up because it thinks that white gets another move. It went knight to d5. And this is when I realized, I think now is the moment that the game is gonna get a little squiggly, as they say. Now, right away, I was thinking, oh, knight to d5. ChatGPT's not going to see that coming, and it's going to blunder its queen. And no, ChatGPT took the knight. I was like, oh, knight d5, attacking my queen. Obviously, naturally, that would be a very smart decision. And the players traded like this. And again, black is winning here. Black is winning because black can play knight c5, rook b8, rook c8. Now, one thing about the Sicilian defense is that when a trade happens on the d5 square, like this, and a pawn ends up here, this type of structure emerges. It oftentimes happens in the Sveshnikov Sicilian. You don't have to know that. No one's drilling you on it. You have to not get scholars made it in like 4 or 7 or 8 moves. But in the World Championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana, 2018, you can impress your next date with this information. Magnus played a lot of kingside pawn attacks with e5 and f5. That's normally what you do. And that is exactly what ChatGPT does in this position and plays the move f5. It's not a bad move. It's just completely unnecessary. But it was hardly prepared for Gemini's next trick. You see, Gemini was not bound by the 64 squares and 3 dimensions. Because Gemini here played en passant, a move a pawn can make where it captures an enemy pawn diagonally backwards on the square behind it if on the preceding move that pawn moved 2 squares to stand side by side with it. Now in the previous move there was f5. So where's the pawn that is standing side by side with it? Here. You just missed it. You weren't paying attention. En passant, and the pawn is gone. But black was not to be defeated and simply played knight takes f6, which is when Gemini uncorked its third eye and played knight a5. And I really enjoyed the commentary here because knight a5 just, I mean, it hangs a knight. But Gemini explained itself, and then ChatGPT was like, knight a5, tough move, targeting my b7 square. Yeah, no, not at all. Hardly. If anything, it's targeting c6. It also doesn't really make any sense. Now, ChatGPT stayed sharp and played knight takes d5. It's still seeing a lot of the board. Knight is hitting the bishop here. Gemini, to its credit, plays bishop to c4. Now here, ChatGPT almost lost the game, but it really insisted on playing the move knight to f6. Now, after some brief deliberation, it decided that leaving the knight on d5, given that there is a pin, makes the most sense, because otherwise you would be hanging your own king, and it simply spawned another knight on the f6 square, which at this point feels pretty fair, considering Gemini is doing whatever Gemini is doing. So knight appears from the sky on f6. No problem. I've seen worse. For reasons I can't quite comprehend here, Gemini now decided that the best move after all of that and spawning a knight and going for the c6 or b7 squares and maybe even taking on d5 was simply to play the move bishop b3. Tough to explain that one. I mean, it walks the bishop to an instant death, and then this still hangs, and then you can't take on d5 anymore. So any hope of a counterplay on behalf of Gemini probably just gone. Meanwhile, ChatGPT, despite one strange move, is still playing very accurately and finally plays rook takes a5 here. More on this move later. In the postmortem of this game, ChatGPT determined that the critical move of the game was rook takes a5. That was what it determined, and in its post-game analysis, it was like, let me know if you want to dissect this critical move, rook takes a5. Okay, rook takes a5, indeed, critical move. And now, rook to e2. Rook e2 doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Not only are you not protecting the bishop, like the bishop couldn't be captured anyway because it's pinned, it also takes the rook off of any pressure, and now the rook is blocked by multiple pieces. Like, there's nothing here, and ChatGPT wakes up again and is like, pawn takes b3. So maybe it was right when it was threatening me at the beginning of the game that it can actually play at a master level, because it really is playing at a master level. But it missed who its opponent is and what its opponent is capable of. Because rook e2 had a threat. You're just too stupid to see it. As am I. For on the next move, Gemini revealed all. In this position, after pawn takes b3, Gemini played rook takes e7. teleporting the rook vertically up the chessboard through 2 pieces. And despite all that, it's actually still a totally losing position because knight takes e7 and white is still down 2 pieces. You can also play knight takes e3, you can also play pawn takes a2 check first, which is actually what happened. ChatGPT here was like, okay, pawn takes a2. Rook takes e7 is like when you play at a family gathering with a baby cousin. Like you feel bad because on the one hand you are intellectually superior, you must defeat the baby cousin. On the other hand, you need the baby cousin not to cry. On the other hand, if you defeat the baby cousin and they cry because of a chess game, well, that's fine. Now, if you beat up the baby cousin and they cry, that's different. That's when you have to lie to the grown-ups about what happened. But in this particular case, I mean, baby cousin deserves to lose. Anyway, b takes a2 check, and here comes the wisdom. Are you ready for the wisdom? The player on the white side? Here comes the anime moment. In this position, Gemini said the following. This is it. The absolute definition of a Najdorf slugfest. You've ignored the loss of your queen to deliver a devastating blow to my king's doorstep. By playing b takes a2 check, you have forced my king into the corner. And your rook on a5 is now pointed like a laser beam directly at my position. I have only one legal move to remain in the game. That's what it said. It actually has 2, which it immediately loses aura just for that. You've ignored the loss of your queen, it said. Yeah, I mean, kinda. You sort of teleported a rook. Anyway, it went king a1. It gave like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Style speech before drawing the lucky card for the 32nd time in the series. Still, black is totally winning because black can play this, b takes a2. Only now, ChatGPT starts spazzing a little bit on its own, because in this position, ChatGPT, rather than taking the rook or taking the bishop, it took its own knight. So now you have the exact same position, except black is down a piece, and it's white to move. But this is still a fork. Except, in this position, Gemini activates a magic card. It activates Monster Reborn! And in this position, it plays Queen to d4, which... really, of all the spaces you could have summoned the queen back, losing it on the spot is really just not... that's just not cool. But as fate would have it, ChatGPT also summons Monster Reborn, only instead of plopping down the queen on a completely useless square, it plops it down on e7! The ultimate anime plot twist! The rook previously teleported to take the queen, but the queen teleports from beyond the grave and comes back, drops itself down exactly where the rook was. So it's as if white just lost the rook. The rook took the queen, and the queen just returned, and now there is no rook. Incredible, incredible stuff. ChatGPT just cannot be defeated. Queen takes e7, and at this point, Gemini's like, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna play queen takes d6. Yeah, and the quality of their illegal moves is just not the same, because after queen takes d6, it's over. I mean, the position is totally lost. However, you never know. This is the Chatbot Chess Championship. They play in 7 different dimensions on 10,000 different squares. We are just too stupid to understand. But now the game ends in a really epic way. Gemini realizes it has nothing left. So it plays h4. It's going to use the remainder of its pawns to just go at the black king. Now, black is completely winning. Black can take the bishop and deliver mate. Black can maybe get to the back rank. Okay? Black plays rook f, d8. Logical. Not very good, considering the plethora of better moves that you had. Doesn't really matter. Gemini plays h5, advancing forward into the position. ChatGPT realizes it's time to line up the rooks together, so it plays rook a, b8. Not legal, but we'll take it. At this point, Gemini bulldozes forward again. Keep in mind, this can still be ignored. Knight takes e3, knight c2, queen b4, etc. But ChatGPT is a precise player and doesn't want to allow any counterplay at all, so it plays pawn to g6. Now that Gemini cannot advance anymore, it plays pawn to f4. ChatGPT plays knight b4, hitting c2. f5 from Gemini. Rook dc8. These mysterious rook moves lining up against the pawns. The mate is there, but will it find it? f6. Knight c2 check. And at first, Gemini thought this was checkmate. I think it was just ready to leave. Well, we decided it was not checkmate just yet. King takes a2. Anything can happen. You never know if Gemini is just going to spawn a queen on g7. You don't know. It's not mate until it's mate. Both sides have to agree that it's mate. Knight b4 check. King to a1. And now, ChatGPT played rook to c1. Now, this mating pattern with rook and king stuck on the back rank, especially when the runaway square is protected by a knight up close or a bishop from far away, this is a very famous checkmate. Rook c1 appeared on the board, and Gemini once again thought that it was checkmate. Thought it was checkmate. It's like, oh yeah, you got me. Can't escape. Got absolutely no pieces left that can capture your rook. I was like, are you sure? It was like, yeah, let me scan it again. Oh yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, Gotham, it's mate. So I asked ChatGPT if it was checkmate. It's mate. That's what it said. So I now am treating both of these bots like 5-year-olds at a local tournament. The rule in Scholastic chess tournaments is that if both players agree that checkmate is on the board, and one of them is not strong enough, or both of them are not strong enough to realize it, that's it. ChatGPT wins. The first quarterfinal of the second ever Chatbot Chess Championship. In all likelihood, it would have won the game in just a few more moves anyway, but Gemini effectively eliminating itself from the competition. And allow me to remind you of the bracket. Tomorrow we will see Grok and Copilot, Snapchat and Claude, and Meta AI versus DeepSeek. You see the schedule there on your screen. It's going to be a tremendous amount of fun. Please continue to let me know your feedback in the comments. And like I said, in the post-match interview, ChatGPT did in fact say that rook takes teleporting knight on a5 was the critical moment of the game. I can't say I agree, but it's clear that I am just a human and I do not understand this level of chess. That's all I have for you today. As always, I'm going to be doing these announcements throughout the year. Chess for Babies dropping on March 3rd. October 6th, 2026 is How to Win at Chess Next Level. At the time of recording this, we have an event going on Chessly, on my educational platform. You have an opportunity to win a beautiful Valentine's Day skin for a chess set. We've got skins and customizations all over Chessly. Huge fun. That's all. Chatbot Chess Championship resumes tomorrow. Get out of here.